Hey, welcome. Let me get right into this without music this time. I don't want to do that in every single video. This is the fiction video, so I just did the poetry video, first instruction of poetry, first poetry assignment. This is the fiction video, first fiction assignment. Less preamble this time about the writer because it wasn't one of my teachers. But again, I want to read the story because maybe this is the best way for you to experience it. And it's what I would do in the live classroom, and then talk about it and kind of set you forward for writing your first assignment for fiction, which is just to write a scene. It could be a scene of any length. I think I'm going to say at least a paragraph. So let's get into it. Let me show you some things. And you know, I tried to make the last video short and it came out about 20 minutes. So I'm trying to make this one even shorter. But the story is longer than the poem. So I really got no hope for how quickly I can actually do this. So we'll see. I'll do what I can. So here's Canvas again. Things are populating. You know, the first unit is here, starters and appetizers. See, I got everything collapsed. You know, I recommend that. We're on this assignment 2, submit a scene, a work of fiction. And I've been filling up this poems and stories. So there's lots more poems since the last time I showed this to you. And there's a lot more stories. So I'm going to read and talk about No One's a Mystery by Elizabeth Talent, which is a great name for a writer, because she's obviously got talent. There's also a Francine Prose, great name. There's this story by Margaret Atwood. It's a little different. It's not exactly a scene. But then there's 2 stories that are really short that are very much a scene. One by my former fiction teacher, Stuart Dybeck, Sunday at the Zoo, which I'll probably talk about in the future. And then another one, Billy's Girl, which I haven't read in a really long time, so I can't speak to it. But I found them online together in the same PDF, so I just put it up. The Signing by Stephen Dixon, which I just scanned in, which is a fantastic story, and I'll talk about that in the future. And then Cream, which came from one of my colleagues here. We all read as faculty by Haruki Murakami, which is this fantastic Japanese writer. And it's kind of a story similar to James Joyce's Araby, which would be really a good story to read. It's a classic story by James Joyce, one of the greatest writers of the 20th century. And the best story for studying epiphany and what an epiphany is. And I think Cream is doing about the same thing. And it's almost like Haruki Murakami imitated Araby, like by drilling down to its essential elements and then doing his own version, which is kind of what I talk about with imitating, right? And so I want you to learn from this. I mean, we can't write in a vacuum, as I keep saying over and over again, but at the same time, I'm not going to require you to read stuff. And I do want you in part to be driven by your interest. I want you to find the things that most interest you. I'm trying to figure out where to put myself so that you can see. I guess I'm just going to have to do, I can't do that. I guess I could just do that. All right, there we go. So No One's a Mystery by Elizabeth Talent. So what I want to do is I want to read this story, and then like I did with the poem, I want to talk about it a little bit for what to learn from it. And when I talk about a scene, this is an excellent scene. We got a little bit of description. We got dialogue and characters. We got a clear point of view, and something happens. And it's all done in 3 pages, really quick and really well done. Now, if you want a comparison, Sunday at the Zoo is a page. And it accomplishes the same things. It's got all of those elements in a page. So, I mean, you could go ahead and read that if you're trying to come up with your own. You can share a scene from a longer work if you have something like that. It's probably what I'm going to do. But when you read it, it's a scene that probably could stand on its own. And so let's get into this. No One's a Mystery by Elizabeth Tallent. For my 18th birthday, Jack gave me a 5-year diary with a latch and a little key light as a dime. I was sitting beside him, scratching at the lock, which didn't seem to want to work, when he thought he saw his wife's Cadillac in the distance coming toward us. He pushed me down on the dirty floor of his pickup and kept one hand on my head while I inhaled the musk of his cigarettes in the dashboard ashtray and sang along with Roseanne Cash on the tape deck. We'd been drinking tequila, and the bottle was between his legs, resting up against his crotch, where the seam of his Levi's was bleached linen white, though the Levi's were nearly new. I don't know why his Levi's always bleached like that, along the seams and at the knees. In a curve of cloth, his zipper glinted gold. "It's her," he said. "She keeps the lights on in the daytime. I can't think of a single habit in a woman that irritates me more than that." When he saw that I was going to stay still, he took his hand from my head and ran it through his own dark hair. "Why does she?" I said. "She thinks it's safer." "Why does she need to be safer?" "She's driving exactly 55 miles an hour. She believes in those signs, speed monitored by aircraft. It doesn't matter that you can look up and see the sky is empty. She'll see your lips move, Jack. She'll know you're talking to someone. She'll think I'm singing along with the radio." He didn't lift his hand, just raised his fingers in salute while the pressure of his palms steadied the wheel, and I heard the Cadillac honk twice musically. He was driving easily 80 miles an hour. I studied his boots. The elk heads stitched into the leather were braided with frayed thread. The toes were scuffed, and there was a compact wedge of muddy manure between the heel and the sole, the same boots he'd been wearing for the 2 years I'd known him. On the tape deck, Roseanne Cash sang, "Nobody's into me. No one's a mystery." "You think she's getting famous because of who her daddy is or for herself?" Jack said. "There are about 100 pop-tops on the floor. Did you know that? Some little kid could cut a bare foot on one of these, Jack. No little kids get in this truck except for you." "How come you let it get so dirty?" "How come?" he mocked. You even sound like a kid. You can get back in your seat now if you want. She's not going to look over her shoulder and see you." "How do you know?" "I just know," he said. "Like I know I'm going to be getting meatloaf for supper. It's in the air. Like I know what you'll be writing in that diary." "What will I be writing?" I knelt on my side of the seat and craned around to look at the butterfly dust printed on my jeans. Outside the window, Wyoming was dazzling in the heat. The wheat was fawn and yellow and parted smoothly by a thin dirt road. I could smell the water in the irrigation ditches hidden in the wheat. "Tonight you'll write, 'I love Jack. This is my birthday present from him. I can't imagine anybody loving anybody more than I love Jack.' I can't. In a year you'll write, 'I wonder what I ever really saw in Jack. I wonder why I spent so many days just riding around in his pickup. It's true he taught me something about sex. It's true there wasn't ever much else to do in Cheyenne.' I won't write that. In 2 years you'll write, 'I wonder what that old guy's name was, the one with the curly hair and the filthy dirty pickup truck and time on his hands.' I won't write that. No, tonight I'll write, 'I love Jack. This is my birthday present from him. I can't imagine anybody loving anybody more than I love Jack.' No, you can't," he said. "You can't imagine it. In a year I'll write, 'Jack should be home by now. The table's set, my grandmother's linen and her old silver and yellow candles left over from the wedding, but I don't know if I can wait until after the trout a la Navarra to make love to him. It must have been a fast divorce.' In 2 years I'll write, 'Jack should be home by now. Little Jack is hungry for his supper. He said his first word today besides mama and papa. He said caca.' Jack laughed. He was probably trying to fingerprint with caca on the bathroom wall when you heard him say it. In 3 years I'll write, 'My nipples are a little sore from nursing Eliza Rosamond.' Rosamond. Every little girl should have a middle name she hates. Her breath smells like vanilla and her eyes are just Jack's color of blue." "That's nice," Jack said. "So which one do you like?" "I like yours," he said, "but I believe mine." "It doesn't matter. I believe mine." "Not in your heart of hearts you don't. You're wrong." "I'm not wrong," he said, "and her breath would smell like your milk. And it's a kind of bittersweet smell if you want to know the truth. Well, this story has it all. This story is, I don't want to say maybe perfect, but as close to perfect as you could possibly get with a story in terms of how it works. So let me go through it with you a little bit and give you some things to think about as you construct your own story. And this is kind of the instruction that I want to give. I don't want to give you too much instruction because I want you to have some freedom, but I want you to think about some techniques. So I want your story, your scene, because you don't have to necessarily write a whole story. It's a scene. So I want you to think about it as one scene confined to one place and one moment in time, or a set of consecutive moments that are a portrait of a particular period of time, but you don't jump in time, you don't go to different places. It's a single scene. Think of it like, in a theatrical play. Like the curtain opens, you're in a particular setting, a scene takes place there, but they would have to go to a different setting, or the set would have to change for a different scene. So this is one scene with one setting, and so you got to have characters. At least one character. You gotta have a point of view with somebody telling the story or some way the story is being told. You gotta have some description. A dialogue is optional, but you need to have either dialogue or monologue, and the monologue could come from the point of view. Here we have dialogue, we have point of view, we have setting, we have a scene. So we have two characters. We have Jack and unnamed woman. We have three characters, really, if you want to count the wife, who's just called the wife. We have the narrator, who's the unnamed woman that Jack is having an affair with, and she's just turned 18. And it's obvious that Jack is older, but we don't know how much older, just older. And she tells the story. She's narrating the story because it starts right away, for my 18th birthday. So we know she's narrating the story. And there's dialogue just between Jack and her. We don't have the wife speak, though the wife honks her horn. And in between the conversation, there's little bits of description. And that's a really good way to handle description instead of like a chunk of description. And there's very little telling you what happens. It's showing you what happens. It's actions from the beginning. Except she starts out with, for my 18th birthday, Jack gave me a 5-year diary and a latch with a little key, light as a dime. So it's this nice little simile there, some poetic language, and then a description of where she is and what she's doing. So she's doing something, and we know where she is, and immediately something is happening. The wife is coming, and we get a really good idea of what's going on. If she's with Jack and there's a wife, then it's really clear and he gave her a gift. Like even before they mention they're having sex or whatever, I mean, you know pretty much right away what's going on here, right? And they've been drinking tequila, that's in here, but she doesn't come right out, we're not told I am having an affair with Jack. She doesn't have to do that. She brings it out in the detail. She brings it out in the actions. She brings it out in the descriptions. Eventually, Jack says, they do that whole, what she'll be writing thing. And Jack mentions they've been having sex and he taught her something. We get this really nice description and action, and we're dropped right in the middle of something that's going on there. She's got to hide or the wife will see her, right? And we get some really nice description, we know we're in a pickup. she's on the floor of the pickup to hide. Roseanne Cash is on the tape deck, which gives us the title, which is the name of the song. And they're both wearing jeans. Her jeans are mentioned later. His jeans are mentioned here. But we get this very selective sentences, very briefly described, but we get a good visual, and it's the visual she has from her position, because she's not privy to anything else, because she, the story, she's telling the story. So she can't tell us what the Cadillac looks like, beyond that at a moment she sees it coming in the distance. And then we learn a lot without being told. We can tell that Jack is dissatisfied with his wife, not just because he's having an affair, but because of the way he talks about her. He's irritated by her and the things she does. Of course, this is before headlights were just automatically on. You gotta realize this story, I think, was written in the 80s. So keep that in mind. And so, they're talking, and we learn a lot about what Jack feels about his wife, and she's learning, right? And so then after some more dialogue, there's some more description. She describes Jack some more, but it starts with the action. So after some more of the dialogue, it starts with what he does to not wave, and the Cadillac honks twice musically, and notice it's not a lot of extra words here, just musically. It's very carefully written, and she's stripped out a lot of unnecessary adjectives and adverbs, which is a style made famous by Hemingway, among others, Raymond Carver. But it's something I struggle with because I tend to be adjective and adverb crazy. But you can do a lot with very little. And so we get this really great, description about the boots, and we put that together with the Levi's and the pickup, and we get a good sense for who Jack is and where he might be and what his job is. He's got manure. He's probably some kind of a farmer or something. But he works around manure. He wears boots. They're listening to country. They have this little, thing about whether Roseanne Cash is getting famous and who her daddy is, which is Johnny Cash, in case you didn't tumble to that. And we get this great moment where she criticizes him for having the pop tops on the dirty floor of the pickup. And again, this was back when you'd pop those off, and you'd have this little tab of metal that you'd have to discard. That was redesigned probably many of your lifetimes. You never experienced these kinds of cans, but those of us who are a little older will remember those. It's like having the bottle caps off of glass bottles, which might have been those too. She just says pop tops. It could be all the same, but this is an opportunity for us to get emphasis on the fact that he's much older than her. No little kids get in his car except for you, because she just turned 18 and obviously been having sex for a while. So he's been having sex with a minor. So this is a thing, right? That is just subtly delivered, right? But they got this repartee, which as they, he mocks her, and she's criticizing his truck. We get more of how the relationship works, right? And so he tells her he can get up because the wife's not gonna see her. And this is a transition into talking about the diary and what you'll be writing in the diary, right? But we get some more description first, So he says, "I know what you'll be writing in that diary," and she asks, right? But before we find out what he has to say, we get some more description. She turns and looks at the butterfly of dust printed on her jeans. It's just a really beautiful image. Think about why. I'm not going to give you everything here, but think about, why did she choose the word butterfly? Why is it a butterfly of dust? What's that meant for us to visualize? And then we get these three gorgeous sentences of description that tell us where we are and give us a visual of what is going on outside the truck. I just think these are some of the best descriptive lines for like economically describing your setting, but not wasting a lot of time with it and not telling the reader anything, but showing the reader what it is that the narrator sees. Outside the window, Wyoming was dazzling in the heat. Imagine that. That's an image that you're supposed to visualize. The wheat was fawn and yellow and parted smoothly by a thin dirt road. I could smell the water in the irrigation ditches hidden in the wheat. And it's almost poetic. It's very beautiful, I think. And it's very economical, and it appeals to your senses. She can see, kind of feel the heat. She describes, and there's a smell that she delivers. And then they start to go through what they think she'll be writing in the diary. Jack going first, and it tells us what he thinks about their relationship in this really fantastic short way through dialogue. And we get a clarity on where they are. They're in Cheyenne, Wyoming, right? And they've been having sex, et cetera, et cetera. And he thinks that she'll just forget about it because he sees this as just an affair. For some reason, he doesn't think he's going to be leaving his wife, or that she won't want to marry him, or we're not sure, right? But she obviously thinks he's going to leave his wife because in her version, and it starts the same, which the repetition is really important to emphasize this for the reader and to make it kind of lyrical. But Jack's reaction to the same language tells us so much about Jack and so much about the girl. No, you can't. You can't imagine it. Is so telling and leaves it open for us to interpret what Jack means by that. So she has the fantasy of getting married and making love. I notice for her it's making love, and for him it's taught you something about sex. And he jokes, "You must have been a fast divorce," which hints around it. Maybe they talked about that, and maybe they haven't. Maybe this is the first time they talked about what they want. And then the children, and what he says about that, and they get to the smell of the breath of the daughter, and it just tells us so much. And then which one do you believe? I like yours, but I believe mine. It doesn't matter. I believe mine. And then it has this killer ending. Is the killer ending, just like a poem has a killer ending. And a story should, or a scene should have strong killer ending, especially scenes as they accumulate in a novel or even in a short story that is made up of multiple scenes. Before you break and go to the next one, it should be some sort of tension. There should be some sort of powerful moment that is created that makes the reader want to keep reading, because otherwise you'd be like, oh, why do I want to keep reading, right? And it's just bam, it's just really strong, I think. And what else I want you to notice is the way dialogue is conveyed. Notice that Elizabeth Tallent doesn't always have to tell you who's speaking. Like here at the end in particular, that's nice, Jack said. So which one do you like? No attribution. I like yours, he said, but I believe mine. And this time it's in between to break up that, which creates an automatic pause. I like yours, he said, but I believe mine. Now, she could have written, I like yours, he paused. But she didn't need to do that because it's obvious that he paused, and she gives us the pause with the said. And then we get the girl again, she doesn't need to tell us I said. And then not in your heart of hearts, you don't. We know this is Jack. It's next. It's on the next line. You're wrong. It's her again. I'm not wrong. He said, and her breath would smell like your milk, and it's kind of British sweet smell if you want to know the truth. And so In fact, if you look through it, I would be willing to bet that there's very few, if any, I said. Like here's one early on, I said. But notice that there's not even a Jack said or a he said. And as you look through, I don't think there are very many I said. It's mostly Jack said, and then you know the other person talking is the girl because it's the only other person in the truck. Now, if you have more than two characters, that doesn't always work to do it that way. But you definitely can easily do that if you're doing some dialogue with two characters. And in a future assignment, we're going to do some dialogue, and I'll let you write it like a script if you want. But then ultimately, if you use that in a fictional story, you'll have to redo it this way with the attributions. You'll also notice that, and this is something called a said bookism by a lot of writers. And I'll be giving you some of these tip sheets in the future, but said bookism is pretty common around writing world for using something other than said. And it's something really popular from Hardy Boy and Nancy Drew stories from when we were kids. You know, it was always he said jovially. You know, there was always an adjective, or excuse me, an adverb with it. Or it was instead of you know, he rasped or he hissed or he growled or he prevaricated, or you know, all of these alternatives to said, which in composition classes, when we want you to do something other than according to so-and-so, or as so-and-so said, or as so-and-so wrote or stated, we want you to mix it up a little bit. Here in fiction, we don't want you to mix it up. You know, said is almost invisible to fiction writers, or fiction readers, I mean. So you look through here, we get a he mocked, because we need to know that he mocked. But she doesn't do anything else to tell us about that. I mean, she could have written this whole he mocked her with a tone of voice and described it, but that would have ruined it. Instead, it's just how come he mocked? You even sound like a kid. And that might be the, and then a little later, I know we had a he laughed. I can't find it right now. I just saw it. But maybe it was a little earlier that we had that. Mostly it's he said, we get some Jack saids, but mostly it's all said. I think he mocked and he laughed are the only two. And he laughed is just an intro into what he says, because, you know, laughed is not actually what you do when you speak. I wish I could find it. I know I saw it. But it's here somewhere. And now I've totally lost it. But so those are things I wanted to share. You know, that story is just so tight that I want to encourage you to do something equally tight, and really is a microcosm, really strong. Yeah, let's see what you come up with. This is going to be a growing thing. You know, there's going to be more lessons, but there's going to be more writing. And I think more of the instruction will actually come through the workshop than it'll come through these little videos I'm doing. So to keep this video little, I'm going to stop it. And thank you for paying attention. We'll see you in the next one.